Criminal Code of Cambodia, 2009, Procuring and Other Types of Infringement on Dignity. Chapter 5. Procuring. Article 284, Procuring. The procuring is an act of 1. Drawing a financial profit from the prostitution of another. 2. Assisting or protecting the prostitution of another, or running with whatever means the prostitution activities. 3. Recruiting, abducting or luring any person to become a prostitute. 4. Exercising pressure on a person to become a prostitute. The procuring is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million rials and 10 million rials. Article 285, Intermediary between man or woman prostitute and procurer. The act of serving as an intermediary between man or woman prostitute and procurer is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million rials and 10 million rials. Article 286, Justification of Presumed Resources. The acts of any person who facilitates or covers up the resources that he/she earned from procuring is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million rials and 10 million rials. The same punishment is also applied to any person who cannot justify his/her resources by habitually living with the person who commits prostitution or by habitually communicating with one or several persons who commit prostitution. Article 287, Acts of hindering the prevention of prostitution. The acts of hindering actions of preventing, assisting or rehabilitating carried out by either public service agencies or by the specialized private organizations for the benefit of persons who indulge in prostitution or who are in danger of prostitution is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million rials and 10 million rials. Article 288, Aggravating circumstances with regard to procuring. Procuring is punishable by an imprisonment of between 5 and 10 years for the following cases. 1. When the procurer/procuress or master of prostitution is an ascendant or a descendant of the person who indulges in prostitution. 2. When the procurer/procuress or master of prostitution abuses the authority that was vested to him/her by his/her functions over the person who indulges in prostitution. 3. When the procurer/procuress or master of prostitution who employs violence or coercion towards the person who indulges in prostitution. 4. When the procuring was committed by an organized groups. 5. When procuring was committed with several persons indulge in prostitution. Article 289, Aggravating circumstances with regard to victim. Procuring is punishable by an imprisonment of between 7 and 15 years when the person who indulges in prostitution is a minor. Article 290, Aggravating circumstances resulting from tortures or barbarous acts. Procuring is punishable by an imprisonment of between 10 and 20 years when the procurer/procuress or master of prostitution utilizes tortures or barbarous acts towards the person who indulges in prostitution. Article 291, Acts of operating an establishment of prostitution. The acts of managing, exploiting, directing, operating or financing an establishment of prostitution, directly or through an intermediary, is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million and 10 million rials. Article 292, Authorization of prostitution activities in an establishment. It is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years and a fine of between 4 million and 10 million rials for the person who manages, exploits, directs, or operates any establishment open to the public, directly or through an intermediary, authorize or tolerates that 1. A person indulges habitually in prostitution inside this establishment or its annexes. 2. A person looks habitually for clients with a view to prostitution inside this establishment or its annexes. Article 293, Acts of rendering a place for prostitution. It is punishable by an imprisonment of between 2 and 5 years, and a fine of between 4 million and 10 million reals for the person who sells or makes available for a person the place not utilized by the public, knowing that the person will use it for prostitution activities. Article 294, Attempt. Any attempt to commit misdemeanors specified in this chapter is punishable by the same penalties as misdemeanors. Article 295, Additional Penalties, Categories and Duration. For the crimes laid out in the present chapter, the following additional penalties may be pronounced. 1. The deprivation of certain civil rights definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 2. Prohibition against pursuing a profession during which time the crime was committed in course of or during the occasion of pursuing of this profession definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 3. Prohibition against taking a residency for a period of not more than 10 years for a felony or for a period of not more than 5 years for a misdemeanor. 4. For a convicted foreigner, prohibition against entering and taking residency in the territory of the Kingdom of Cambodia definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 5. The confiscation of any instruments, materials or any objects which have been used to commit the offense or were intended to commit the offense. 6. Confiscation of objects or funds which were intended to commit offense. 7. Confiscation of incomes and properties earned from the offense. 8. Confiscation of utensils, materials, or movable objects at the place where offense was committed. 9. Confiscation of one or several vehicles belonging to the convicted person. 10. Prohibition against possessing or carrying a weapon definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 11. Closure of the establishment which was used to prepare or commit the offense definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 12. Prohibition against operating the establishment which is open to public or used by public definitively or for a period of not more than 5 years. 13. Posting the decision of sentence for a period of not more than 2 months. 14. Publication of the decision of sentence in the newspapers. 15. Broadcasting the decision of sentence by all means of audiovisual communications for a period of not more than 8 days. Article 296. Criminal responsibilities of legal entities. Legal entities may be pronounced to be criminally responsible according to conditions of Article 42, Criminal Responsibilities of Legal Entities, for offenses prescribed in this chapter. Legal entities are punished to monetary fine from 10 million reals to 50 million reals and one or more additional penalties as followed. 1. Dissolution according to modalities determined by Article 170, Dissolution and liquidation of legal entities. 2. Placement under the court surveillance according to modalities determined by Article 171, Placement under the court surveillance. 3. Prohibition against operating one or more activities according to modalities determined by Article 172, Prohibition from operating activities. 4. Closure of the establishment which was used to commit offenses according to modalities determined by Article 176, Closure of establishment. 5. Prohibition against operating the establishment which is open to public or used by public according to modalities determined by Article 177, Prohibition against operating the establishment. 6. Confiscation of instruments, materials or objects which were used to commit offenses or were intended to commit offenses according to modalities determined by Article 178, Confiscation of ownership. Sale and destruction of confiscated objects, and Article 179, Confiscation and rights of the third party. 7. Confiscation of objects or funds which were intended to commit offenses according to modalities determined in Article 178, Confiscation of ownership, sale and destruction of confiscated objects, and Article 179, Confiscation and rights of third party. 8. Confiscation of incomes and properties earned from offences according to formalities determined in Article 178, confiscation of ownership, sale and destruction of confiscated objects, and Article 179, confiscation and rights of the third party. 9. Posting decision on punishment according to modalities determined by Article 180, posting decision. 10. Publication of decision on punishment on newspapers or broadcasting on all means of audio-visual communication according to modalities determined by Article 182, broadcasting decision by all means of audiovisual communications. Chapter 6. Other types of infringement on dignity. Article 297, Apparent intoxication. Any person who is in a state of apparent intoxication on public roads is punishable by a fine of between 5,000 rials and 10,000 rials. Article 298, Soliciting other person in public place. Any person who solicits other person in public place in order to incite her/him to have sexual relations is punishable for a fine of between 5,000 rials to 50,000 rials.